It's been 2 months since the divorce, and my apartment feels like a tomb. The fridge hums empty. The coffee tastes bitter and cold. The laughter of my kids is just an echo in my head. Then my phone lights up. Jenna, Emily's sister. I stare at the screen. My finger hovers. I could let it ring. Pretend I never saw it. Pretend I'm already moving on. But something deep in my gut, something primal, tells me to answer. Her voice trembles through the line. I can't keep this secret anymore. We need to talk. And right there, the air shifts. My hands shake. My heart pounds like it's back in the courtroom. This isn't over, not by a long shot. If you've ever been blindsided like this, if you've fought for your kids or your dignity, stick with me. Hit subscribe because what you're about to hear will change everything. The phone call left my hands shaking. Sunday rolled in heavy and gray, pressing against the windows of my apartment. The washing machine thumped in the corner like a slow heartbeat, while I folded my kids' tiny t-shirts, shirts that still smelled faintly of their shampoo. I stared at an empty plate on the counter and remembered our Sunday pancakes, syrup dripping coffee, steaming a ritual gone like smoke. Guilt crept up, the kind that makes your chest tight. All those nights at the office, all the missed warning signs. I told myself this wreck was my fault until Jenna's trembling voice echoed again in my head. We need to talk. My jaw clenched. Enough hiding. Enough pretending. I set the laundry aside and grabbed my coat. I didn't know what she'd tell me, only that I had to hear it. The silence in the apartment felt like it was daring me to stay. I walked out. The street smelled of rain and diesel as I drove to the edge of town. There was a small cafe there, the kind fishermen stop at before dawn. Chipped wooden chairs, yellow bulbs, humming the sweet bite of waffles in the air. I took a seat by the window and ordered a black coffee that came out as dark as oil. My leg bounced under the table. When Jenna walked in, I barely knew her dark circles under her eyes, a scarf thrown over a tired face. She didn't smile. She slid into the chair opposite me, fingers trembling as she placed her phone on the wood. For a moment, we just sat there, two people who'd been living different versions of the same lie. Then her eyes locked on mine. They lied to both of us, she whispered. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. My throat went dry. Show me, I said. Jenna's thumb flicked across her screen. Image after image appeared, hotel receipts from cities Emily had no reason to visit, late-night messages dripping with promises, bank transfers with amounts that made my stomach turn. Each swipe was a blade, each photo another nail in a coffin I hadn't realized I was already lying in. My coffee sat untouched, bitter steam curling upward like a warning. I pushed the phone back toward her, but couldn't stop looking. My fingers dug into the edge of the table. I'd spent months telling myself I was crazy, paranoid, overworked, but here it was, in color and numbers. Real. My pulse slowed, not rage, but something colder, sharper. Jenna's eyes searched mine, afraid of what I might do next. Outside, gulls screamed over the water. There's more, she said quietly. Much more. I nodded once. Then tell me everything, I said, voice low. The fight I'd been avoiding had just begun. Her phone still lay between us like a loaded gun. My coffee had gone cold, my hands wrapped around it just to stop them from shaking. Jenna stared down at the table. I watched you fight for your kids, she said softly. I watched Emily use them like chess pieces. Her voice cracked on the last word. She told me how she'd kept quiet out of loyalty, how each lie had cut her a little deeper. They're just kids, David, she whispered. They don't deserve this. I could see the guilt eating at her, the kind of guilt that keeps you up at night staring at the ceiling. I leaned in, my voice low. Why now? Jenna met my eyes, jaw tight. Because enough is enough, she said. Then, like it cost her something, she added, I'll testify. The cafe seemed to tilt. That single sentence changed everything. I nodded once, and the war had a witness. I drove home through streets slick with rain, Jenna's words echoing in my skull. Testify. The word sounded like a lifeline and a threat at once. In my kitchen, the fluorescent light buzzed overhead. A stack of unopened envelopes from my lawyer sat like bricks on the table. I lined them up one by one, palms sweating. Took a deep breath, slid the knife under the first seal. Paper rasped like sandpaper, line after line of visitation rules, signatures, restrictions, each clause a wall between me and my kids. My throat closed. She'd built a paper fortress and locked me out. For months, I hadn't even opened these, too beaten down to look. Now I read every word. Each paragraph burned. I slammed the folder shut, breath sharp. The kitchen felt smaller, darker. I wasn't crazy. I was cornered. And men who are cornered don't stay quiet forever. Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, I sat in the glow of a single lamp, flipping through memories like files. Emily, on the couch, scrolling her phone screen, turned face down when I walked in. Girls' night, she'd say. Another work dinner. Another unexplained trip. Back then, I told myself trust was what marriage was built on, that asking questions would make me controlling. So I stayed silent, worked harder, brought home a paycheck, and swallowed my doubts. Now, under the harsh light of Jenna's evidence, those nights lined up like red flags I'd ignored. My stomach twisted, not rage, but a kind of grief for the man who had believed. I whispered the word aloud. Trust. It sounded foreign, a dead language. I looked at the clock, then at the stack of papers. Enough pretending. Tomorrow, I'd start putting the puzzle together, and I wouldn't stop until it was whole. By morning, the fog in my chest had turned to something else, clarity. Not peace, not rage, just cold, sharp focus. I opened my laptop, pulled up months of bank statements, and started printing. The pages stacked fast, each line a breadcrumb. I grabbed a yellow highlighter tracing every out-of-town charge, every unaccounted dinner, every last hotel. Then came the timestamps, Jenna's screenshots. I lined them up like crime scene markers. Chicago, Dallas, Seattle, same weekend, same nights, same damn lies. It wasn't paranoia, it was a timeline. My timeline, built with numbers and screenshots. No emotion, no assumptions, just facts. Cold, brutal, undeniable facts. I leaned back in my chair, eyes burning from the screen. I knew what I had now wasn't just suspicion. It was proof, the kind judges can't ignore. And if Emily wanted a fight this time, I'd be armed. I picked up the phone with hands still wet from washing my face. The mirror hadn't lied. I looked like I hadn't slept. Maybe I hadn't. I stared at my lawyer's contact for a long second, then tapped. He picked up fast. David. I took a breath that didn't feel deep enough. I want to reopen custody. Silence. Then the lawyer said what I knew was coming. Do you have new evidence? I looked at the stack on my table. Proof. Pain. Pattern. I said it without hesitation. Yes. Plenty. The words hung in the air like a loaded gun between us. He cleared his throat. Okay. Let's talk. The sound of his voice turned my pulse from fear to focus. For the first time in months, I wasn't just reacting. I was taking the fight to her. Quietly. Legally. Ruthlessly. And this time, I wasn't alone. That night, my phone buzzed with a message I didn't expect. Jenna, are you okay? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then another came in. I meant what I said. I'll be there. I'll testify. My chest tightened, not from fear, from something heavier relief, the kind that doesn't fix anything, but reminds you you're not insane. I typed back, thank you. You don't know what this means to me. I think I do, she replied. It was the first time I felt like I wasn't screaming into the void. For once, someone else had seen the truth and was willing to speak it out loud. I set the phone down gently like it might break the spell. Outside, the city was silent, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone in the dark. Tomorrow, I'd see my kids again, and nothing, not even her, could stop me from showing up different. I hadn't seen them in over a week. When Lily ran into my arms at the drop-off, it nearly knocked me over. She shoved a crumpled drawing into my chest. Crayon lines me, her Max holding hands under a crooked sun. I kept my sunglasses on, but my throat tightened. Max followed, baseball in hand. Can we go to the park, Dad? We spent that Saturday like it was borrowed time. Max pushed Lily on the swing while I watched from the bench, coffee in hand, the wind cutting sharp through my jacket. Their laughter, God, their laughter felt like oxygen. And in that moment, something inside me clicked into place. I'd let the silence, the guilt, the pain run the show too long. I swore to myself right then, they will not grow up thinking this is normal. That love is something that lies or leaves. Whatever it took, I was going to fight different this time. Sunday came fast. Too fast. I packed their little backpacks, snacks, jackets, toothbrushes. Max hugged me tight. Lily whispered, "Don't forget to water our flowers." And then we were back at her door. Emily opened it with her arms crossed. No smile, no words, just a stare. One of those quiet scanning looks women give when they sense something's changed. I handed over the bags, crouched to kiss the kids goodbye, and stood tall. I didn't flinch, didn't fill the silence with apologies or weak jokes like I used to. I simply nodded. See you soon. She looked me up and down. Something in her face, tight lips, flickering eyes told me she knew. She didn't know what was coming, not exactly, but she felt it. Something had shifted, and for once I didn't shrink under her gaze. I didn't owe her comfort anymore. The man in front of her now, he wasn't folding this time. That night, I didn't need wine. I didn't need music. Just silence and the sound of purpose. I spread every piece of evidence across my dining table, printed messages, receipts, photos, Jenna's testimony notes. Each one slid into a labeled folder, each one placed deliberately like bones in a box. When I zipped the final tab shut, the sound ripped through the room like a verdict. Rush. I sat there for a moment, just breathing. Then I pulled out a Sharpie, wrote one word on the front of the folder. Truth, not evidence, not revenge, not even her name, just truth. Because somewhere between the lawyer's emails and my daughter's drawings, I'd stopped caring about beating Emily. This wasn't about punishing her anymore. It was about showing the court and my kids what really happened. The next step, make sure the system heard every word of it. Truth didn't end with that folder. It started bleeding out of me in ink. That night, I opened a blank notebook and wrote one word at the top. Why then came the rest pages of sleepless nights, missed birthdays, voicemails I'd saved but couldn't bear to replay. I wrote about the ache after handing them back, the silence in the apartment when they were gone. I wrote down the things my daughter told me about school, about how mom gets mad when I ask about you. Each sentence was like letting air into a room that had been sealed too long. I wasn't just documenting, I was rebuilding. Piece by honest piece. I didn't write to win. I wrote so no one could ever say I didn't speak up. This wasn't just evidence. It was my voice stripped of apology, stripped of guilt. And for the first time since the divorce, I heard myself again. Morning hit different. No fog. No weight. I stood in the bathroom, white tile cold beneath bare feet. The mirror used to be a place I avoided. I'd glance and turn away. The man staring back looked tired, buried. Not today. I shaved slow, steady, watched the stubble fall like old armor. I buttoned my shirt, pulled the knot on my tie, tight like I meant it. No hesitations. When I looked back up, the man in the glass held my stare. His eyes weren't hollow anymore. He didn't look broken. He looked ready, ready for war, ready to be a father no one could ignore. The quiet in the room wasn't heavy this time. It was loaded like the second before a fight starts. I grabbed the folder labeled Truth and walked out the door like a man walking into his purpose. No more hiding, no more hoping. I was done waiting to be saved. People noticed. By noon, my coworker leaned over and said, "You okay? You're different today." I just nodded. Different was right. Emails got answered faster. Numbers clicked. My focus didn't drift. Not once. There was no room for chaos anymore, just mission. During lunch, I stepped outside into the sun and made the call. "Let's move forward," I told my lawyer. "Everything's ready." He asked, "You sure you're up for what comes next?" I said. More than ever, there was a calm in my voice that surprised even me. Not forced calm, not pretend, just controlled fire. I went back inside, sat at my desk, and opened a spreadsheet. But my mind wasn't on quarterly reports. It was on Lily's drawing still tucked inside my wallet. That little crayon sun. Those 3 stick figures. I wasn't just fighting for custody anymore. I was fighting to redefine what Dad meant in this story. The calm at work didn't last long. That night, Jenna called. Her voice was different, heavier. She didn't start with hello. She started with, "There's more." She told me when it began the affair. The first trip, the business conference that wasn't. The timing lined up exactly with one of Lily's birthdays. That detail hit harder than the rest. Then came the part that burned. She used to laugh about it, Jenna said. She told me, "He won't say anything. He never does." I didn't say a word, just sat on the edge of my bed, breathing like I was underwater. And the kids, I asked. She told them you were busy, said you chose work over them. There was silence between us after that long, bitter silence. When she finally spoke again, her voice cracked. I should have stopped this a long time ago. She didn't cry, but she didn't need to. Her guilt said enough for both of us. The next weekend, when I came to pick up the kids, Emily was already waiting outside. That was new. She stood on the porch with her arms folded, but her posture wasn't smug this time. It was stiff, guarded. "You taking them anywhere today?" she asked casually. I looked her in the eye. "Park lunch homework." The usual. No heat, no apology, just facts. She nodded almost too quick, then turned away. There were no accusations, no sarcasm, just tension. Like she could sense something under the surface, something steady, something cold. That's what gets to people like her, not the shouting, but the silence. Not the argument, but the discipline. I wasn't dancing anymore, and she noticed. As I strapped Max into the back seat, I saw her watching me from the porch, same crossed arms, but the confidence was gone. She didn't know what I knew, but she knew I knew something. That was enough for now. Lily stood on her toes by the window, staring at the ledge like it was waiting for something. "Can we plant something, Daddy? So it looks happy here." We went to Home Depot that Sunday, just the two of us. She chose marigolds, orange, stubborn little things. I bought a clay pot, soil gloves, way too big for her hands. Back at the apartment, she dug clumsily, pressing each root like it was a secret. We watered them together, and for the first time, the window didn't feel like a barrier. It felt like a promise. Every morning since we've checked them, she calls them her happy flowers. It's a small thing, dirt under fingernails, water splashed on tile, but it's ours. That pot on the window isn't just decoration. It's proof that something can grow even here, even after betrayal, even after silence. Next weekend, I'd tell her what they really mean, but not yet. The marigolds bloomed the morning I filed. The irony wasn't lost on me. At my lawyer's office, I signed the motion with a pen that felt heavier than it should have. The word custody at the top of the page looked different now, like a fight, not a formality. We attached the exhibits, photos, statements, bank records, timelines, truth in folders, pain in bullet points. My lawyer flipped the final page. "We'll submit by noon. Court date will follow within 2 weeks." I nodded, jaw tight. "Let it come." He leaned back, measuring me. "You know it's going to get ugly, right?" I didn't blink. Good, because storms don't scare men who've already drowned once. By the time I stepped back into the sunlight, I didn't feel nervous. I felt like a fuse had been lit. Tick. The court date wasn't an appointment anymore. It was a reckoning. That night, her name lit up my screen. Emily. No emojis, no games. Just, "Are you really doing this?" I stared at it for a minute. The kind of minute where your hands go cold, but your mind stays calm. I typed slowly, "I'm doing what's right for the kids." That was it. No accusations, no dragging her name through fire. Just a clean blade. She read it. No typing bubble, no reply, just silence. And that told me everything, because silence isn't always absence, sometimes it's panic. She wasn't used to this version of me, the version that doesn't flinch, that doesn't beg, that doesn't play her game. She thought she could keep control, but she'd underestimated what a father looks like when he's had enough. Let her sit with that silence. I had more important things to prepare for. We started the next morning. My lawyer's office was a war room. Papers, audio recorders, legal pads stacked like ammo. He drilled me first. What will you say when they accuse you of retaliation? What if she denies everything? What if they push your buttons? I answered every question flat, calm, focused, like a man who's already lived through the worst version of this. Then it was Jenna's turn. She looked nervous, palms sweating, bouncing her knee. But when she spoke, her voice didn't shake. "She made me lie," Jenna said. But not this time. We practiced cross-examinations, built timelines, reviewed tone, phrasing, body language. This wasn't about drama, it was about precision. By the time we wrapped, the sun was going down and no one had eaten. My lawyer looked up and asked, "You ready for this?" I stared right back. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. I didn't pack a bag, didn't iron my shirt again, didn't rehearse lines in the mirror. Instead, I lay flat on the couch, staring at the ceiling like it might blink first. The silence wasn't empty. It was thick, full, heavy with everything I hadn't said for the past 2 years. I breathed slow. 4 in. Hold. 7 out. I thought about Max's drawings on my fridge. Lily's voice calling "Goodnight, Dad." Her marigolds blooming like they had no idea what tomorrow was. I walked through the timeline one last time in my head, every receipt, every message, every date, not to memorize, but to ground myself. I didn't need motivation. I didn't need anger. I just needed rest. I closed my eyes at 3:14 a.m., woke up 2 hours later, and somehow that was enough. The mirror didn't lie this time. My suit was clean crisp, navy blue, no distractions. The tie was tight, the collar snug. My hands didn't shake. I poured coffee I wouldn't drink, fed a nervous stomach that wouldn't take it. At the window, Lily's marigolds burned orange against the glass, proud little soldiers standing their ground. I touched one lightly. "It's a sign," I whispered to myself. And it was. Outside, the street was quiet. No sirens, no wind, just the kind of stillness you only feel before something big breaks loose. The courthouse wasn't far. I drove with the windows cracked and no music playing. When I stepped out of the car, folder in hand, the air felt colder than it should have, but it didn't reach me. This wasn't dread, it was focus. One foot in front of the other, one truth at a time. The courtroom smelled like polished wood and stale nerves. I walked past rows of empty benches, each one echoing footsteps that weren't mine. Jenna wasn't there yet. Emily was. She sat on the left side blazer, sharp lips tighter than I'd ever seen them. She whispered something to her lawyer, not looking at me. The judge entered, robe glasses, steel in her voice. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. Just sat down and said, "Let's begin." It felt 10 degrees colder. The bailiff asked us to rise. I stood straight, folder pressed to my side like a shield. When I looked across the room, I didn't flinch. I didn't avoid her eyes this time. She looked. And I didn't look away. That's when I saw it, the smallest crack in her expression. She thought I'd come in angry, off balance, begging. But I wasn't that man anymore. The version in front of her today, he was ready to bury lies under oath. When it was our turn, my lawyer stood first. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of calm that silences a room. "We'd like to begin with financial records, Your Honor." He handed the judge a thick stack of statements. Hotels, flights, wire transfers. The ink alone told a story. I watched her eyes scan the pages. Still no expression. Then came the photos. Dates and timestamps. Locations that didn't match her calendar. A text. "Same hotel next weekend." Another. "He'll never know." The last item was a printed timeline. Jenna's testimony aligned with the bank records. A perfect match. I didn't blink, didn't breathe. The silence in the courtroom wasn't heavy. It was surgical. Truth, when laid out clean, doesn't need to shout. It just waits to be undeniable. And in that moment, it was. When they finally responded, their tone shifted. Her attorney stood all confidence, polished and polite, and began with, "This marriage had been dead for a long time." He said I was using the courtroom to punish her. That this wasn't about the kids, it was about pride. Emily sat still, eyes flicking toward me once. Her face didn't crack. I felt my jaw tighten, hands locked together beneath the table. Everything in me wanted to stand up and spit fire, but I didn't. Because if I'd learned anything in the last few months, it was this: the loudest man in the room usually has the weakest case. So I stayed silent. Let their words hang in the air. Let the judge see the contrast, emotion versus evidence, volume versus truth. Because I didn't need to win the argument. I only needed to win the ruling. The judge shifted in her chair and said 6 words that split the room. "We'll now hear from the witness." The back door opened. The hinges creaked louder than they should have. Jenna walked in. No makeup, no games, just a plain blouse, steady steps, and eyes that didn't flinch. Emily froze. Her whole body stiffened, jaw tight, fingers curled in her lap. She didn't turn to look. She didn't have to. She already knew. The bailiff called Jenna forward. She stood before the stand, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore under oath. I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel alone. That was the moment the game changed. Because this wasn't just my word against hers anymore. Now someone else was willing to say it out loud, and the truth was about to have a voice of its own. She took the stand, adjusted the mic, and didn't look at Emily once. Her voice was quiet, but every word landed like glass cracking. They started seeing each other over a year before the divorce. Trips, hotels. I knew. The room didn't move. You could hear fabric shift, pens tapping, but nothing else. The judge didn't interrupt. Neither did the attorneys. I stayed silent out of loyalty, family loyalty, but I watched what it did to the kids. I watched David disappear from their life without knowing why. She paused, just for a breath. And then I told myself it wasn't my place. But I see now that silence is a choice, and I can't make that choice anymore. Her hands clenched in her lap. She looked straight at the judge, eyes sharp. I'm here because the truth matters, and because children deserve better than this. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Jenna continued, calm, precise. She wasn't venting. She was testifying. She used to brag about it, said, "He's weak. He'll never fight." The words hit harder than if Emily had shouted them herself. Then Jenna pulled out her phone. Screenshots, dates, messages, geotags. She passed them to the clerk, and the judge flipped through. Each image told a story, and every story ended with the same conclusion. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a pattern. The vacations lied about, the girls' weekends fabricated, the work conferences non-existent, and all of it timed perfectly with the weekends I didn't have the kids. You could hear a pin drop. No one coughed, no one whispered. Even Emily looked like the wind had left her lungs. She finally looked up, and for the first time in that courtroom, she looked unsure. And just like that, the silence started working in our favor. The testimony ended. The judge nodded once, and just like that, the room exhaled. My lawyer stood again. Your Honor, based on the new evidence, the timeline, and the witness statements, we're requesting a modification to the custody agreement. He walked through it clean, no emotion, no drama. More overnight time, equal school break distribution, summer rotation. And then came the part that mattered most. We believe this serves the children's emotional and developmental stability. That's the core of this request. I sat forward just slightly, not to intimidate, just to be seen. I wasn't a name on a file anymore. I was a father with receipts, with witnesses, with a voice. The judge didn't speak right away. She flipped back through her notes, closed the file. I'll review the case fully before issuing a final decision. One sentence. That's all she gave. But that was enough to turn the air thick again. This wasn't over, but it was moving. We had barely stepped out of the courtroom when I heard her heels behind me. Emily's voice snapped like a wire pulled too tight. You dragged my sister into this. I turned calm. She was fuming, arms crossed, voice low enough to not draw attention, but sharp enough to draw blood. You crossed a line, she hissed. I met her eyes for the first time since it all began. Not with anger, with clarity. No, I said. This isn't about you anymore. She blinked, just once. No retort, no deflection. She turned on her heel and walked away, her silence saying more than any threat could. And that was it. The last remnant of her control, gone. For the first time, the boundary was mine to define, and it would hold. The air outside the courthouse hit like a blessing. Warm, still, clean. Jenna was already waiting near the steps, arms folded, chest rising and falling, like she'd just come up from underwater. She looked at me, not smiling, just steady. You did the right thing, she said. I didn't respond right away, just gave her a small nod. Enough. We both knew what that moment cost. She exhaled one long, trembling breath, and something invisible left her shoulders. Guilt, shame, years of watching things she couldn't unsee. Now she had done what needed to be done. Not for me, not even for herself, for the kids. No more secrets, no more pretending. And in that silence between us, there was peace. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of lies. That evening, I picked up the kids like nothing happened. No court talk, no drama, just 2 scoops, each chocolate, for Lily vanilla with rainbow sprinkles for Max. They laughed with mouths wide open, ice cream smudged across their cheeks. The world was simple again, if only for a moment. As we sat on the curb outside the shop, Lily leaned her head on my arm and whispered, "Do you think we could stay at your place more?" I smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind that hides every crack behind it. Maybe, I said, voice low, steady. Maybe very soon. She beamed, totally unaware of the storm behind that word. And I swallowed the lump in my throat like it was the last bite of pride I had left. Because this fight was never about revenge. It was always about getting to say yes to moments like that. In the days after court, the silence didn't feel so hostile. I started waking up before the alarm. Laced up my sneakers, hit the trail around the lake. Nothing fancy, just movement. Air in my lungs, blood flowing again. I ate at the same time every day, real meals, not microwave guilt. And for the first time in what felt like years, I slept through the night. No nightmares, no gut-punch dreams of custody battles or cold apartments. Just sleep. And in that stillness, I realized something. I wasn't falling apart anymore. I was rebuilding slow, quiet, methodical. Not just my case, not just my home. Me. Every step around that lake, every spoonful of eggs, every breath in the dark, it was structure. It was control. It was the base layer of peace. I had finally secured the first brick back safety. Structure gave me space, and in that space, something new crept in life. Each evening, I wrote in the journal, again this time, not in anger, but clarity. Just lines like Max asked about dinosaurs again. Lily said the marigolds were yelling yellow. I didn't feel broken today. I called the kids every night, even if just to hear about snack time or a new crayon drawing. And then I did something stupid and beautiful. I planted a pot of basil next to the marigolds. I don't know why. Maybe I missed the smell of something green in the kitchen. Maybe I just wanted to watch something grow and stay. But that scent, fresh, sharp, stubborn, started to fill the apartment. Not like before, when it smelled like court documents and silence. This time, it smelled like home. By the second week, I wasn't just surviving. I was showing up. The project at work, the one I'd been putting off, I handed it in early. Clean tight, exactly what they needed. My manager stopped by my desk and said, "Good work, man, just that." But it landed. Later that day, one of the guys from the team invited me to lunch, first time since the divorce. We sat outside, cheap burgers, real laughter, nothing about custody. No, you okay, man, just normal. Like I was part of something again, like I belonged. And I realized it wasn't just about fighting for respect in court. It was about earning it back everywhere else, too. My name started to mean something again, not just on legal papers, but in places where I disappeared. I was no longer just the guy who lost everything. I was the guy putting it all back together brick by steady brick. The call came right after dinner. I stepped onto the balcony phone, pressed to my ear, the air cool against my face. "The file's solid," my lawyer said. "You've got witnesses, documents, clean narrative." But then his tone shifted lower, firmer. "Expect drama. Maybe press. Stay calm. Focus on one thing. What's best for the kids." I stared out over the streetlights and said the words like an oath. "The kids come first. No matter what." We hung up. I stood there for a moment, hand still on the phone, heart oddly steady. No fantasies of revenge, no courtroom speeches echoing in my head. Just one mission, now not winning, but protecting. And I wasn't walking into that final day to destroy her. I was walking in to reclaim them. Later that night, Lily asked if I could help with her math. We sat at the kitchen table, crayons scattered beside lined paper marigolds nodding outside the window. I walked her through fractions, one part here, two parts there. She looked up, eyes wide. That makes sense now. And then she smiled, not just polite, but proud. Something in me cracked wide open. This, right here, this was the real fight. Not in a courtroom, not in depositions or witness statements. Here, helping my daughter believe she could solve hard things. I imagined her remembering this night 20 years from now, not the trial, not the tension, but the warmth of this moment. A father, a table, a pencil, a safe place. That's how you anchor a child. That's how you rewrite a story. The next morning, Max asked if we could ride. His bike had been leaning against my wall tires, flat, brakes rusty. We pumped it up together, him holding the hose, me tightening the bolts. Then we hit the street, the one with that little hill he'd always avoided. He stared up at it. I said, "You don't have to." He said, "I want to." The first attempt, he wobbled, panicked, fell. Knees scraped, eyes wet, but no tantrum. I held out my hand. He took it, stood up. "Let's try again," he said. And the second time, he made it halfway. Third time, all the way down. His shout echoed down the block. "Dad, I did it." And I realized that hill wasn't just his. It was mine too. We were both learning to balance again, both proving we could stay upright. When I pulled into the driveway that Friday, I braced for the usual frost. But Emily didn't cross her arms, didn't roll her eyes, didn't mutter a passive-aggressive jab about my new lifestyle. She handed the kids' backpacks over without a word. Her eyes scanned me, not with anger, but with something colder calculation, like she was trying to read a man she no longer recognized. I didn't give her anything, just a quiet nod, a simple smile. Not smug, not weak, just grounded. She lingered a second longer at the door, searching for a crack, then turned inside. That moment told me more than words ever could. She's not just worried about losing. She's worried I've stopped needing to win. And that's a kind of power you don't fake. The next morning, a buddy from college sent me a message. "Dude, this would blow up online. You should post it. Show everyone what she did." I hovered over the screen, typed, backspaced, typed again, screenshots, quotes, the timeline, one upload away from burning the last bridge standing. Then I glanced at the fridge, 2 drawings taped side by side, Lily's flower, Max's rocket, crayon scrawled names in messy, proud handwriting. And I heard my daughter's voice. "Dad, we could put that one next to your marigolds." My hand dropped from the phone. Revenge is easy. Dignity is deliberate. I didn't post, didn't vent, didn't destroy, because they're always watching, and I want them to remember a father who chose quiet strength over cheap applause. That evening, we made pizza from scratch. Flour dusted every inch of the counter. Max couldn't stop spinning his dough like a broken frisbee. Lily dumped half a bag of shredded cheese in one corner. The oven smoked. The crust burned a little on one side, and it was perfect. They laughed so hard they nearly fell off the stools. Flour on their faces, cheese in their hair, the kind of joy you can't fake. For the first time in years, the apartment wasn't a place we visited. It felt like home. I leaned back in my chair, watching their hands reach for another slice. And in that exact moment, I realized something. I wasn't rebuilding my life anymore. I was living it. It came in late, just past midnight. Blocked number. 3 sentences. No name. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Think of the kids. Pull the damn petition. My jaw tightened. I read it twice, then a third time. No threats. No names. Just pressure dressed in concern. I didn't reply. Didn't even flinch. I took a screenshot, added a timestamp, and sent it straight to my lawyer. Then I deleted the message, set my phone face down, and double-checked the locks. Not fear, just focus. This wasn't about paranoia. It was about knowing pressure comes loudest when the truth gets close. And the closer we got to a ruling, the more masks would start to slip. She called the next day, voice soft, breath tight. I should have said something years ago. I saw the way she used the kids. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. But there was never peace, was there? There was a long pause. No excuses, no self-pity. Just raw human guilt unraveling through the phone. I let it sit, then answered slow. You showed up when it counted, and you told the truth. That's more than most ever do. Her breath broke. I could hear her crying, not loud, not dramatic. Just soft sobs from someone who'd carried shame like bricks. And somehow forgiving her didn't just free her, it freed me. Because when the dust settles, we don't need perfect people. We need honest ones. That afternoon, my inbox pinged, subject parent-teacher conference, choose your slot. The form was basic, just dates and times, but I read it like it was gold. I clicked the first available spot, adjusted my work calendar, blocked the whole evening. No overlaps, no delays. I replied back with a note, looking forward to it. I'll be there. No parade, no performance, just presence. Because this showing up at a classroom table with plastic chairs and spelling tests taped to the wall, this is where it matters most. Not in court, not in text threads or social media posts. Here, where Lily gets to look out into the crowd and know Dad chose this moment, her moment, every time, without question. Everything in my life used to revolve around reactivity. Emails, custody exchanges, emotional landmines. Now I start the day before the sun, slow jog. Lungs steady, no music, just breath and gravel. Breakfast is plain, eggs, coffee, sometimes oatmeal. Lunches get packed in little containers like clockwork. I prep for the week on Sundays, not just food, but peace. Lights go off by 10. No scrolling, no spiraling, just stillness. And in those rituals, I found something deeper than routine safety, not from the world, but within myself. Because if you can master your mornings, you don't get knocked over by midnight texts or sideways glances. This isn't control. This is stability earned. We were in the car. Lily had snapped at Max over a game. Nothing big, but I used it. Hey, I said, glancing in the mirror, you don't lead with fear. They both got quiet. You say sorry like you mean it. And you tell the truth, even if it's messy. Love isn't leverage. It's a place you run to, not from. They didn't say much. Didn't need to. Max nodded. Lily looked out the window thinking, then whispered, okay, Dad. That's all. No dramatic music. No speech. Just a seed. But parenting isn't thunder. It's repetition. You plant it today so they have something real to stand on when life tries to bend them. And in that car, I wasn't just raising kids. I was raising people. I was at work in the middle of a spreadsheet when the phone buzzed. Unknown caller ID. But I knew that rhythm. I stepped out into the hallway. Quiet. Empty. The kind of sterile space where big things always happen. We've got movement, my lawyer said. Judge issued something this morning. Just got the clerk's notice. My breath hitched. Not panic, just that split-second vacuum where everything stops. What kind of movement we'll know soon, but it's significant. I hung up, looked at the pale walls, felt the tension crawling under my skin, Every hour between now and the answer would feel like a week. But I wasn't the same man who started this. I didn't beg fate to be kind. I just stood still and waited. And the clock was finally ticking loud again. I couldn't pace. That wasn't who I was anymore, so I watered the marigolds. One by one, orange petals caught the sunlight. Alive, resilient, exactly what they were supposed to be. I sat on the couch, closed my eyes, and followed the 4-7-8 breath pattern. In, hold, out, again. My mind wandered to the framed photo on the wall, Lily on my shoulders, Max holding my hand. Their faces full of trust. Not the courtroom, not the files. Them. That's what this was always about. And in that quiet, a truth rose through the silence. No matter the outcome, they'll know I showed up. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't bracing. I was ready. For the verdict, and for what came after. The phone buzzed. This time, no hesitation. The judge has filed. I stood. My chair barely made a sound against the floor. I walked to the empty conference room, closed the door behind me. It was sterile white walls, cold air, no distractions. Just me. And the storm I'd survived. I sat, notebook in hand, pen tight between my fingers. Every second dragged. My heart didn't race. It waited. "Are you sitting down?" my lawyer asked. "Yeah." I didn't speak again. Didn't interrupt. Didn't pray. I just braced my back against the chair and stared out the narrow window. The world didn't know what was coming. But I did. His voice was calm, legal, detached. Joint custody has been granted expanded terms. I blinked. Then again. "You'll have alternating holidays, overnight stays, full summer weeks." I didn't answer right away. Just breathed. That kind of breath you don't even know you've been holding for months. Then I leaned back. Let the weight roll off me like armor falling after war. Not victory, not vengeance. Balance. My kids wouldn't grow up hearing one version of me. They'd know me as present, as safe, as theirs. And in that moment, something shifted. The man who started this journey, he was gone. The one sitting in that chair, he was finally whole. I picked them up early. No fanfare. Just a simple, "Hey, can we talk real quick?" Lily looked up, confused. Max still tugging his backpack strap. "We're going to be together more. A lot more." It took a beat. Then Lily screamed, wrapped her arms around my neck, legs swinging off the ground. Like, "For holidays too?" "Yup." Max blinked, then grinned. "Can I bring my bike?" "All summer long, buddy." They laughed. I laughed. And this time it wasn't polite. It wasn't forced. It was full, deep, real. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like I was stitching broken pieces together. It felt like we were starting from whole. This wasn't the life we had before, but maybe it was better. Family built again. On truth. On trust. The next drop-off came quick. No delays, no excuses. She opened the door and handed over Max's backpack like always. But this time she paused. Her voice low-clipped. "Hope you're happy." I met her eyes, not sharp, not smug, just honest. "I'm proud I did what was right for the kids." She looked away. A flicker in her jaw, but no comeback. No storm, no sparks, just silence. She turned back toward the house, closed the door behind her without a word. And I stood there for a moment, not angry, not relieved. Just done. Not with parenting, not with trying. Done with the war. There's a strange kind of peace in watching resentment fade and realizing it doesn't live in you anymore. We started small, a desk by the window for homework. Lily chose the color. Max got magnets for the fridge calendar, one for soccer, one for dad nights. We printed a house agreement. Tell the truth first. Always. Say sorry when you need to. Home is where you're safe to be real. They helped tape it to the fridge. It wasn't perfect, crooked edges, smeared marker, but it was ours, and over time, routines became rhythms. Dinner at 6, homework after. One story each at bedtime, no skipping. Not control, not structure for structure's sake, just safety stitched into ordinary things. They didn't ask if this was permanent. They just lived in it. Because kids don't need promises. They need consistency. And every little thing I did now whispered one truth: you're safe here. The sounds were different now. Little feet thudding across the floor. Shoes half on, half off, scattered at the door. Laughter bouncing off the walls, not loud, just constant. The fridge, once filled with expired condiments and takeout magnets, now bore new art stick figures with messy hands, crayon suns, a house with 3 smiles, and a crooked chimney. "This one's you," Lily said, pointing to the tallest figure. "With your serious face," Max added. I smiled, not because it was perfect, but because it was ours. That small apartment, once filled with silence and questions, had taken on a heartbeat again. A place isn't home because you own it. It's home when someone draws you on the fridge. And this was the kind of noise I'd never ask to quiet. I found Lily staring at the flower box. The marigolds, once bursting with gold, hung limp, brown edges, shriveling stems. "Are they dead?" she asked. I knelt beside her, brushing the soil with my fingers. "They're tired," I said, "but the roots might still be okay. Can we fix it?" I grabbed fresh soil from the shed, clean water, and together we dug, patched, started again. Lily pressed the dirt gently around the base, hands covered in earth. "We can plant new ones too," she whispered. I looked at her and saw the mirror, because healing wasn't about keeping everything alive. It was about knowing when to begin again. And in that moment, with dirt under our nails and sunlight on our backs, we planted more than flowers. We planted the belief broken things can bloom again. She knocked softly, no warning. Holding a small bag, kids' socks, a few books, a set of keys we forgot were missing. Didn't want to keep anything that wasn't mine. We stood in silence for a beat. Then she said it without drama, just quiet clarity. "Most men would have folded. You didn't. You didn't run. You stayed." I nodded, not for thanks, but for truth. "And you spoke when it mattered," I said. "That takes its own kind of strength." She smiled, eyes still carrying history, but less weight. Then one last thing before turning to leave. Taking responsibility isn't punishment. It's love, the real kind. And I knew what she meant. Because this love for your kids, for what's right, it doesn't always feel warm, but it's the kind you can build a life on. That night was quiet, but not empty. Max was the first to whisper, "Good night, Dad," soft, final. Lily appeared a few minutes later, hugging her pillow. "Can I sleep in your room tonight?" I nodded. She curled up in the corner chair, already half asleep. I stood by the doorway, lights off. Just the shape of peace, glowing in the dark. Their breathing slow even, like waves pulling back from the shore. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just stood still, letting the silence settle in, this time not on me. There was nothing chasing me anymore. No documents, no shadows, no second guessing. Just 2 sleeping children. And a man who'd finally walked all the way through the storm and come out quiet. I didn't win anything. There was no trophy, no applause, no vindication waiting on the other side. What I did was stand. I stood not against someone, but for someone. For my kids. For the truth. For the kind of man I still believed I could be. The truth, it burned. It stripped me bare. But it also cleaned the wound so it could finally heal. Love isn't leverage. Love isn't control. Love is showing up again and again, even when it hurts. And if you're still in it, still fighting in courtrooms and bedrooms in your own head, hear this. Don't give up. Not if you're doing it for them. Not if you're doing it right. Because one day they'll look at you, not with fear, not with distance, but with trust. And you'll know it mattered.